Well, hello, everyone. I am super excited about this dialogue on today. My name is Ronaldo Hardy. I do a multitude of different things, but today I'll represent myself in my capacity as president and CEO of Balance Financial Wellness. We are a national financial wellness provider focused on holistic wellness through the lens of financial wellness for consumers across the United States of America. And I am super excited today that I have the distinguished honor and pleasure of interviewing my mentor. He's like a father to me. We have a special relationship with one another, someone I greatly admire because of his host of wisdom and experience in multiple lanes to include both public and private service. I have not been so enamored, if you will, with somebody such as him. I just love everything he does, the excellence, the commitment, how he has maintained relevance across multiple generations and continued to extend that in ways that brings generations to the table. And you may know him from a number of different backgrounds, but most recently, he has been leading a national effort and conversation around aging while Black. And I think that it is absolutely phenomenal as someone who is now at the next step of my aging journey, settled into these 40s. I am 42 now. I did literally have my own midlife crisis at 40, and the conversations with him have been very helpful to me as I embrace what it feels like to age while Black. So help me welcome Raymond Jetson, the president and CEO of Aging While Black. Raymond, anything you want to say as we open this conversation?
Well, Ronaldo, I am super excited to share this space with you. Always enjoy being in conversation, in connectivity, in community with you. I will share with you kind of a sneak peek of your future. You go from having connections with people where you are like brothers,
Hmm.
and then you get to this point where you're like an older brother, uh, and then you get to your unk stage, uh, and then you arrive at that point where you become a father figure uh, to people. And so I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of what lies ahead.
I kind of feel like I'm in my emerging unk season. Like I am in certain scenarios, big brother, and in other scenarios, I'm unk, right? So I did not think that it could happen to me, but it happens to all of us. And the alternative is not something that I am trying to rush at all. So I will embrace this aging rather than expiring early, right?
Yes, sir.
So I love this. You are turning 70, which is incredible. To live 7 decades, to watch what has happened generation to generation, to see the closing of certain gaps between what was possible and what has happened, but also then to live long enough to see the evolutions and the emergence of some of the same issues arise again. You've had an opportunity to be extended in multiple lanes to see what life looks like as a leader in multiple different directions. And as you reflect on 70 years of life and the very distinguished career that you've had in public service, I'd love to hear from you what moment stands out as defining your path.
So it's such a rich place to start. I will couch it by saying one of the observations that I have uh, is that so very often these defining moments appear to be hardship, difficulty, loss, hurt, disappointment. But in fact, they shape you uh, and your path in really important ways. I think back to the loss of my father My father died at 55. I was 20, 28. I just made 28 of, a couple of months before that. And he had just made 55 a couple of months before that. And that certainly redirected my life as my mom asked me uh, to run to finish out my dad's term. I'd never aspired to public office, and so that changed the trajectory of my life in important ways. I think to the birth of my daughter, my first child, Jerica Nicole, who's born with Cornelia de Lange syndrome. Hearing that at that point she had a life expectancy of 6 years, um, but not only have some of the most important lessons I've learned in life been taught to me by her, but also I became the assistant secretary for the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. I was able to get legislation enacted that created access to home and community-based services for literally tens of thousands of families because I was Jerica Nicole's dad. And it gave me a certain standing that I would have very likewise not had. I think back to my own public journey with substance abuse and addiction, and making a public announcement. I had a dear friend of mine who was a political consultant who consulted me, who said, "Please don't say it publicly. You'll never get elected. Your leadership career will be over." I instinctively felt I needed to, and the next election, I was unopposed. But not only that, in my life as a pastor, uh, I had people who came to me who said, "I'm here because you've been where I am now."
Mhm.
And so there are these moments that felt like heartache, pain, loss, that actually had an indelible imprint on my journey.
Oh, I love it. And it is interesting. I love you bringing that up, about how loss really a lot of times is its own launching pad, right? When
Yes,
you're there, loss and difficulty, like when you're there in the moment, it is extreme frustration and very difficult to see how whatever you're experiencing while you are a prisoner of the moment is helping to narrate this broader, more beautiful story. And especially as it relates to reaching people, I identify a lot with what
yes,
you're saying. Just being, I think this is where we have kindred spirits because, it's the same for me. I love to live out loud as a leader, per se, with wisdom, but still in a way that makes sure our humanity is present. And I believe that you have been very effective in doing that and helping to show this resilience in every season and being able to do it in such a dignified way. You are definitely a distinguished gentleman, is what I will say. You are a distinguished gentleman. All right. So tell me this will then. And I know a little bit of this story, and I know you just touched on it.
yeah.
But you made a commitment beyond a moment, right? So what motivated you to truly dedicate your career to public service? And talk about how has that calling evolved a bit over the decades?
So the whole idea of serving the public was ingrained in me from my earliest childhood. Uh,
Hmm.
my great uncle was Gus Young, one of the first three people, African Americans, in East Baton Rouge Parish to register to vote. He was um, the catalyst behind the First Ward Voters League, which was the first civic voting rights, community organizing effort for Black people around rights and civic participation. And he was like a grandfather to me because my father was estranged from his father, but And Uncle Gus was like a father to him, and so he was a grandfather to me. And from my earliest days, I saw him, and I saw the impact that he had not only on my father but on other people. And I believe that Uncle Gus and to some degree my dad both died relatively early, uh, just because they had given so much in serving people. Uh, Very little, if anything, that they did was for them in the narrowest sense. It was always about the community and the people who were part of that community. And so that was the framing with which I entered life. Uh, but like so many others, my late teens and early 20s were about how do I get mine?
Mhm.
What's in it for me? How do I do this? And, you know, coming back, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. I came back to Baton Rouge to help manage my dad's campaign. He decided he wanted to, after 32 years of this public service, he wanted to run for elected office. Blew me away when he said it. I never thought I'd hear it from his lips. We won a hard fought campaign. Um, and 6 months later, he was dead of leukemia. And in that moment, when my mom talked to me about running to finish out his term, I mean, that was my motivation.
Mhm.
That I had to. I mean, there's no way I was going to say no in that moment. And so that was the beginning of it. And
Mhm.
in terms of evolution, I describe it in this term, Ronaldo. I told people when I was in the legislature that the first time I got elected because I was Louis Jetson's son. And I never got it twisted that people actually voted for Raymond Jetson. My name happened to be a placeholder, but
Mhm.
people were voting for Louis Jetson's son because Louis Jetson's wife asked them to. After that, I had to stand on my own and in offering myself to people to be reelected and to go into other areas and to have other opportunities. So I had to establish my own identity as a public servant, as prayerfully a servant leader. And so becoming and learning, I didn't know who I would be as a state representative because I'd never wanted to be a state representative. And so learning and understanding uh, the essence of these various roles I've occupied, always through the lens of so what does this mean for the people that I'm actually serving?
I love that. I did not get the chance, obviously, to meet your father and your uncle, who I know were amazing, incredible human beings. But what I can say is that you more than came into your own and established not only your position in everything that you have done in every space, a high commitment to excellence. I am a witness that it has transcended generations, and I'm a part of that now. I love, we don't have time to talk about our story of meeting, but it is funny now that I know you as well as I do. I am certain that in our first meeting, you were sitting there like, the audacity of this young man. And I love it. So, in knowing you, I'm like, oh, I totally understand why we work. Now, I'm coveting, and so we're gonna make a pivot. I'm coveting that sweatshirt. All right. So you could just hold it up and let people see a little bit more of it. But I want that. All right. So I'm gonna just say that, and I am certain that others who are tuned in are thinking the same thing. And so you can absolutely let us know how we're gonna get it. Right. So I needed to start there and then pivot to a place as we go into Aging While Black, right? Of interestingly enough, this is something we share. So your father was 55 when he passed. My mom was 56. A conversation is interesting that you're leading a national movement now, aging while black, because one conversation that we have not had and don't have all the time for today probably is that there is something interesting that happens to your mindset about your own aging journey when you witness a parent die that young, right? In your mind, your parents are supposed to make it to retirement age and they're supposed to be able to be grandparents to watch your kids get older and all of that. And then you have this scenario where you have a mother in her 90s and a father that passed in his 50s. And now you're sitting in the middle of that, right? I wanted to anchor this in that, like understanding that there's both an irony and an interesting piece to the calling to lead a conversation around aging while black, when I know at some point of your journey you had to consider your own mortality and what it might look like seeing your father die at that age. So going deeper now into this work that I believe is so important and will continue to expand. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write about aging while black, a radical reimagining of aging and race in America, and why is it important to tell this story now?
So you rightly situate this book first and foremost in lived experience, because the whole aging while black movement finds its ultimate foundation, its initial foundation in my father's passing. Because, and I did not mention this early on, you know this, uh,
Mhm.
my father and I were born on the same day. We're both born on Valentine's Day. So every birthday I've observed, and February 14th, 2026 will mark 15 of them that I've observed past my 55th birthday.
Mhm.
And the ones in between 28 and 55. I didn't really understand how young my dad was until
Mhm.
I approached my 55th birthday.
Mhm.
And I began to, with each passing year, ask, so what is the obligation that comes with this year? What do I owe for 15 birthdays that my dad never got to experience?
Mhm.
What comes with such a rich privilege? And so early death is unfortunately a part of the Black aging story.
Mhm.
But on the other end of that is my 92-year-old mom, who, like so many others, finds herself in that toxic sweet spot of, as a retired school teacher, making too much money to qualify for public support, but not enough to pay for the services that will allow her to live the quality of life and independence that she deserves to thrive. And here I am, 70. And so it's all of that. And I was invited to participate in a fellowship between Encore and Public Voices. Encore was, as the name might suggest, this entity focused on encore careers, people who have reached a certain point and looking to do something else. Public Voices was a group focused on thought leadership and narrative. They did a fellowship. I was in the first cohort, and it entered me into this aging space. And one of the things that I noticed is that there was this really important conversation happening about aging in America, this sea change in terms of demographics that was happening. But one of the things that caught my attention was that the conversation couched aging in America as if it was this universally shared experience.
Mhm.
And that's not the case. Aging in America is not race neutral, period. full stop. And so that was the space where I decided to plant my flag, reached out to my wonderful friend and sister, Callie Johnson Graves, and who helped me in lifting up Metromorphosis, and saying, hey, this is where I am. This is the moment. This is the work that I see. And I thought the story was important 3 years ago when we started the conversation. I had no idea how starved people were for this conversation, how important they so many people across this country felt it was. And so I did a TEDx talk. I had keynote speaking. I went places. I was at conferences, but there was so much depth to just, for example, the three pillars of aging while Black: recalibrate the village, embrace innovation and rapid change, lean into Sankofa. I was saying those words and giving snippets, but I felt as though there needed to be a fuller exploration of this conversation around Black aging. And so that's why I wrote the book. I thought the movement was important. I thought the book was important. Well, Ronaldo, when I look at America in 2026, man, it is far beyond important. It is vital that we speak this truth unapologetically, that there are systems and structures that impact Black people across the life course that show up in damaging ways as they age. And that's true. It doesn't matter who's in what office, who has what thing to say. That's truth. And we have to stand on that truth. And that's what Aging While Black seeks to do in the midst of it all.
I love that. I love that you said so strongly there is not neutrality in the aging while Black journey specifically, that we cannot be categorized as being the same as other ethnicities. I was just having this conversation last night. I'm on a doctoral journey, and I take it upon myself to educate when there are moments of ignorance to be addressed. Of course, people hear that terminology and it sounds so bad, but when people don't have information, that's exactly what it is. And having to have that conversation about our position and the journey that we experience from childhood forward as someone who is Black, and then also how we are not exempt from specific things, no matter the social economic category and class that we may be a part of. Because sometimes people think that once you get to a specific area of access, something changes. There are certain elements and nuances that may be a bit different, but there are challenges that travel with you as you age. No matter what you get access to, there are some things that have traveled with us through generations, right? That we cannot exempt or absolve ourselves from. So I love that you are taking time to properly frame the conversation around aging while Black. And with that in mind, the question is, how do we reframe aging while Black, right? In or aging in the Black community specifically, from a narrative of struggle, which can exist in many ways, whether we are perpetuating that or it's pushed onto us from media narratives, now social media amplification of voice and other things. How do we go from a narrative of struggle to one of strength and wisdom and celebration, which I know is what you're after?
Yeah, so I think it begins with recognizing that we face challenges,
Hmm.
we are not challenged. That doesn't define who we are. As a matter of fact, I mean, think about the internal fortitude, the determined spirits that it takes to move from being chattel property to being president of the United States. Think about the wisdom, the skill, the shrewdness, the dexterity that it takes to navigate Jim Crow and water hoses to end up being academicians, entrepreneurs, and just demonstrating excellence in so many other areas. And so I think that it is important that we push back on the deficit framings that present. It's also equally important to recognize that a critical driver of this narrative and deficit is the aging ecosystem itself. Because the aging infrastructure that we have in this country, the formalized one, so very often is designed to care for people, to address deficits and challenges and needs, whether that's a place to be or food to eat or other resources. And while everything about that is important, it is absolutely equally important to recognize that not everybody needs care in that way, and that there are aspects of people's community, their culture, their personalities that deserve to be honored, that people have resources, that people are able to contribute. And it requires a different way of engaging people. And in my opinion, it has to begin in the anchors of Black life, whether that's congregations, whether that's social organizations, whether that's community organizing efforts, whether that's sororities, fraternities, Masonic organizations, the links, and other civic and important organizations. We have to recognize that our people are aging, but they are also resources and valuable resources. So it begins there, but it also continues in challenging the aging ecosystem to recognize that it has to change its calculus in engaging people, generally, Black folks especially.
Oh, I love it. There's so many. That's one thing I love about us. I was in a conversation actually with another friend of ours, Savitra, and I was on their platform and talking. And one of the things I talked about was just, I'm like, I love being Black and talking about how, we there are benefits to being Black or to engaging Blackness properly. And I refer to us as, the boil and the crawfish boil, right? We are the seasoning and the gumbo. We bring flavor to experiences. And there are so many rich stories to tell about who we are, but so many contributions that we've made to culture that at times get overlooked and need to be embraced more effectively, and our story told in the right way. So, I want to dig deeper into some of your reflections and wisdom. So, one thing about me, and you already know this, I love talking to people at every decade. So I'm 42. I want to talk to somebody who's 50, someone who's 60, someone who's 70. I'm always trying to get a sense of what's waiting on me right at the next step. It's hilarious because when I sit down with you and I'm like, and tell me when it's gonna be different than this. I'm always met with brother, good brother. And there's, you give me the reality that, hey, there are some things that won't adjust. They will just expand in new ways, helping me understand the ongoing dichotomy of life of celebration and trial kind of at the same time. That I'm trying to strive through something and celebrate something else at the same time, all the time. And so it helps me to know one, I'm not crazy on my own journey, and anchors my expectation in many ways. You were one that anchored my expectation in grief, like helped me to understand specifically what I was up against. So I love the wisdom of generations ahead of me, right? So I'll ask you this question. At 70, what life lessons have shaped your perspective on purpose and joy?
I'll begin by saying, and you've touched on one expression of it in your comments just a moment ago. But I think what I have grown to recognize is that there's always attention at work. I rarely, if ever, find myself in a place where it's all this and none of that. And so there's always this tension that you have to navigate, and you have to keep going. As it relates specifically to purpose, uh, the greatest clarity for me was the moment when I recognized that my purpose was not about me, but how it impacted the world around me. I had a summer, and I've shared this with you on a number of occasions. I had a summer, probably 20 plus years ago now at this point, where I uh, interviewed 12 to 15 people whose opinion I really value. And I asked them questions like, when I show up as my best self, what am I doing? What does it look like? What's the impact? What do I do well? What is it that, and just a series of questions. Every conversation ended formally with, and if you had to describe me at my most impactful self in a single word, what would it be? And at the end of that summer, the one word that I came up with was catalyst. That when I show up as my best self, it is less about what I am doing and more about what I am equipping others to do. A catalyst serves to accelerate or retard the rate of change in an object. And so I exist to accelerate the rate of change in positive environments. That's my purpose. That's why I'm here. And so everything that I do, people oftentimes get caught up in the different jobs, the different roles I've occupied. And I share with them. I've had a bunch of different titles, but I've only had one job ever since that summer, and it's to be a catalyst. And you can't pay me enough to take a title that doesn't allow me to be a catalyst because that's my purpose. That's why I'm here. That's how I've been designed. And for me, joy is being that in an impactful way that's characterized by excellence. Joy is seeing the smile on my daughter's face when we drop the top in the convertible and ride. And she can't say a word, but the smile on her face says, Daddy, this is cool. That's joy for me.
Man, I tell you this, I am definitely the son, not of your loins, but I am totally like everything you say resonates. I always say, and my personal mission statement, change the world by building the people who will change the world. And similar to you, that has shown up in multiple different ways. And people are like, how do you do all these things? And I'm like, I open my eyes to do one thing many different ways every day, and that's to build people. So where show up to be a catalyst, very similar. I show up to find the opportunity to invest in the growth and development of others, and it extends the impact that I'm making by being able to share in the stories of other people, and it's really joyful. Like there's a lot of joy in advancing visions of the hearts of others. 70, big birthday.
Yeah.
Why is this one special to you?
You are. a church boy.
Yes.
You heard the three score and ten.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, as a part of my childhood, I heard the blessing of three score and ten. Had no idea what that meant,
Mhm.
but as I grew, I understood. Well, I mean, man, when my eyes open on February 14th, 2026, I got my three score and ten.
Yeah.
And so that is a source of rejoicing for me. But it's also deeply uh, grounded in the fact. I
Mhm.
wrote a piece 5 years ago now that was published and had some wide distribution, entitled "I've Arrived at 65 and Nothing is as I Thought It Would Be." And I wrote in that piece, and I write in the book that Ronaldo, the older men in my family when I was a child, 65 marked the end of their work life. But they did hard work. They worked for the railroad. They were roofers. They were carpenters. They were mechanics. They worked hard, and they would retire at 65, and very few of them lived to be 70
Mm.
because they were so broken and so battered,
Mhm.
because they didn't have access to health care. They didn't have an understanding of how to eat and exercise. They worked to provide for their families. They worked hard. They were limited in the opportunities. And so many of the Black men in my life did not live to be 70. And I say men, as I point out in the book, because in my early childhood, Black women didn't have the opportunity to work in many jobs that would allow them to retire at that point. And so, as a Black man in the Whitfield Judson clan, to reach the age of
Mhm.
70 is a cause for celebration. And so it's special for that reason.
I love that. Such a great segue to the next question, which I'm very passionate about.
Yes.
Financial wellness. I show up and do that work daily. But as I'm on my own aging journey, I also look at health much differently than I did previous decades of my life. I'm developing a new relationship with food where I'm like, I can feel how things impact my body sooner. And it's having me think through how I want to engage based upon the quality of life I want, both today and long term. So, I'd love to know, how has your relationship with financial wellness and health evolved over your lifetime?
So, in terms of financial wellness, um, I've certainly reached a point uh, where it's a lot less about accumulation and more about alignment and legacy.
Mhm.
And so, there came a point where um, I certainly wanted to be able to provide a certain standard of life for my family. The other part of February 14th is my wife and I will observe 39 years of marriage. Uh, and I wanted, my wife has never asked for a lot. And I wanted to make certain that I could provide a quality lifestyle, standard of living for her, and that cost a certain thing. But there was also this really important point where uh, I lost this aspiration of trying to make all the money in the world, uh, and became more centered on how do the financial opportunities present align with who I am and who I want to be and what I want to leave behind. And it became less about spending whatever growth and increase that came my way, and more about investing it, uh, and providing for those years that I don't want to get up and do this in this way every day and want to play golf more, or travel, fish, whatever, and being able to, if uh, in the vicissitude of life, I leave here before my wife, my children, uh, that they are situated. And so, finances have taken a different twist for me. In terms of health, uh, I've had a couple of episodes that caused me to understand a couple of things. Number one, uh, doesn't matter how much money I have, if I'm not healthy, it doesn't matter. Secondly, uh, I have to own my health. I can't entrust that to a system that wasn't designed with me in mind. And there's nobody who's going to be concerned with my health and well being as much as I am. But then also to recognize that my health cannot be captured on a chart. My health is wide ranging. It's not only what my blood pressure and my cholesterol reading is, it's also how much peace I have. It's also how healthy is my laugh these days. It's how many people I can actually call and share transparently with. And so health is a much broader perspective for me now. Now, I do take care of my physical health with a greater intentionality. On my 70th birthday, I will actually weigh less than I did in ninth grade. Uh, and so, I'm particular, attentive to my diet. I exercise. I've engaged a personal trainer. I want to work on balance and mobility. I want to do all that I can. Uh, you will understand this language, and I'll stop here. I firmly believe that the days that I have on this earth were numbered before I got here. And so I won't add a single one to them, but I can sure improve the quality of the ones that I will have.
Oh, I love that so much. And I will tell you, uh, at least for me and what I've seen, it feels like 40 is kind of that hard pivot point where some of the things you start talking about, both from a financial and health perspective, your thought processes begin to change. I kind of question if your thought processes don't start to change at that point. We're
Now,
a little bit scared.
I was going to say, if you reach 40 and they don't change,
Yeah.
we have a problem.
We have a real problem, and I'm nervous for you. So, man, I tell you, we never have enough time when you and I talk. But to close this out, right? As you enter this new chapter, what are you most excited about personally and professionally?
Personally, I'm excited uh, about what doors, opportunities to grow, contribute, and absorb that the 70s will open. Uh, and I'm also leaning fully into, I'm 70, so I'll say whatever the hell I want. Uh, I'll lean on that because as I was a child, my elders would say to me, I am fill in the blank. I'll say whatever the hell I want. So at 70, I get my license to say whatever the hell I want. So that. Professionally, I think it's really, really important. And this intersects, Ronaldo, between the personal and the professional. I think it's really important that I model what it means to be a modern elder. What does it mean to be an elder in this season, in this time? So that has impact for aging while black. Aging while black is celebrating its third birthday on my 70th birthday. Obviously, the organizational life cycle and the personal life cycle are not aligned. And so, what does that mean in terms of the longevity for the work and transition and other things? So, those are the kinds of things that I am focusing on. I'll end it here. There is a time and a season for everything under the sun. I believe those words are true. And so, my challenge at this point, entering this chapter, is to understand what time it is. What is it time to start? What is it time to stop? And what does this season hold for me?
I love that. I will tell you, I am looking forward to the day that I can also say, I am blank, whatever that age is, and I can say what I want. And also to tell all of the young people about what I'm trying to teach them and what they have to look forward to in the future. I'd love to say to you, happy birthday. I know that just a day or two early, right? But let's say it's too early, 3 days early. But happy birthday! And I am so grateful for your life that you have and continue to live well. The ways in which you do impart into people and organizations and communities. So proud of your impact, Aging While Black. Remember its birth and have seen how it's grown and flourished. And I look forward to a year from now talking about how this was the biggest, best, boldest year of Aging While Black. Thank you so much for all you do. And I have loved every bit of this conversation today.
As have I, my friend, and thank you so much for always being willing to give of yourself. We use the term in Aging While Black, reciprocal wisdom. And so thank you for sharing your wisdom with me.
You're
Blessed.
welcome.